TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations.
Shalom ve'erev tov. Good evening. Welcome to our daily TV7 Israel News Bulletin, broadcast from Jerusalem. It has been revealed that President Donald Trump decided to sign the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran against the recommendations of CIA Director John Ratcliff, Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insists that Israel will retain its forward defenses on all of its fronts, to include Lebanon, despite threats by Iran to end the deal. And U.S. President Donald Trump says Syria should enter Lebanon to fight Hezbollah in Israel's stead. Amid mounting public criticism in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a press conference in which he defended his decisions regarding the war with Iran and its outcome, at the backdrop of President Donald Trump's own decision to ratify a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, that projects a less favorable outcome to Israel in particular and the United States at large.
עכשיו אני שומע אנשים שואלים, מה השגנו?
I hear people asking, what have we achieved? And my response to them is, what have we achieved? We have fended off an immediate threat of annihilation. Together with our American friends, we launched the largest offensive air operation in Israel's history. We neutralized nuclear scientists, decapitated the leaders of the terror regime, pulverized nuclear facilities, destroyed missiles and the vast majority of the factories that produced them, struck countless military industries and infrastructures, destroyed their navy, their air force. We eliminated basic commanders who massacred the Iranian people and caused enormous damage. We estimated in the hundreds of billions of dollars, and some even estimated to be closer to $1 trillion, enormous damage to the economy of Iran that took them decades to build. But here is the most important thing. We saved the state of Israel from the threat of nuclear annihilation. Because it is crucial to understand, Iran was racing toward a nuclear weapon just before Operation Rising Lion. It was racing toward a nuclear weapon and racing to bury its missile and nuclear industry deep underground.
Prime Minister Netanyahu further asserted, in defiance of the Ayatollah regime's demand of the United States, that Israel will not withdraw from established forward security zones along the border with Lebanon, a preventative measure that aims to frustrate Hezbollah's unambiguous intentions to reconstruct its terror infrastructure, from which it could then once again directly threaten Israel's northern communities.
The struggle is not over and done. We will need to maintain our vigilance, remain strong and determined to defend ourselves as required. This is true not only vis-a-vis Iran. This is also true vis-a-vis Iran's terror proxies, which we have hit in an unprecedented manner. We did it in Gaza, we did it in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen, we did it in the refugee camps in Judea and Samaria, we did it everywhere. We have established deep security zones around the state of Israel. We did it in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria, where, by the way, we destroyed all the weaponry of the Assad army, which was a central link in the axis of evil. And I wish to clarify, we will remain in the security zones for as long as it is required to defend our country. Because after October 7th, I established a simple principle: Israel will not allow terror organizations to encamp on our borders, to tunnel into our territory, to prepare for a massacre close to our citizens. Today, the heroic IDF fighters stand as barrier between the terrorists and our citizens. What we did, in fact, was change our entire security doctrine, change ourselves as well. We broke the barrier of fear. We take initiative, we attack, we surprise, and we strike at those who threaten our lives. Israel is stronger than ever, and Iran's axis of evil is weaker than ever.
Amid reported tensions between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu over concessions made by the Trump administration's negotiating team at the expense of Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu was asked whether he was in a position to tell President Trump no.
President Trump and I know one another for many years. He is the President of the United States. I am the Prime Minister of Israel. Frequently we see eye to eye. And there are also instances we see less eye to eye. I am responsible for the security interests of Israel. I stand firm to grantee these, and I want to tell you how I do so. You need to stand firm not by means of outbursts. It needs to be done with much reason, which requires considerable experience, and much reason, and significant understanding of the American theater. It demands a lot of experience. I think that I am implementing this in the best manner, and when necessary, I stand firm on our national security interests.
It is important to point out that the decision by President Trump to adopt the Memorandum of Understanding was made at the recommendation of Vice President J.D. Vance and Presidential Envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Their strong recommendation was accompanied by significant pressure emanating out of a number of regional countries, to include Turkey, Qatar, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan, and in contrast, CIA Director John Ratcliff, Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth have reportedly advised President Trump against the MOU. Moreover, according to a report by the American news website Axios, CIA Director John Ratcliff told President Trump that evidence gathered by U.S. intelligence agencies raised serious doubt about Iran's willingness to make the nuclear concessions, which the U.S. is seeking in any final agreement. Moreover, U.S. intelligence provided ample proof that the way Iranian officials were discussing the deal among themselves was inconsistent with what they were telling the mediators and the United States. And, according to one source, the intelligence reflects that the Iranian intentions are not in line with their commitments under the deal. Despite all of the information provided about Iran's intentions to deceive the United States, President Trump has nonetheless decided to adopt the recommendations of Vice President Vance and his emissaries, Witkoff and Kushner. President Trump was subsequently asked about his expectations for Israel vis-à-vis Lebanon after he had conceded to Iran's demand to force Israel to halt its defensive attacks against Hezbollah, a designated terrorist organization that had launched 20 one-way attack drones towards Israeli communities in northern Israel, and to which the IDF responded by striking a Hezbollah command and control center in the Dahya neighborhood of Beirut.
What are the expectations for Israel? Can this deal survive if Israel attacks Lebanon?
It can, and I consider that the minor war. Iran's a big one, but we have that a little pinprick out there that constantly rears its head, and that's Hezbollah. And, I was very responsible for Syria, and the man that's running Syria now is a person that I put there along with President Erdogan and some others. He's done an amazing job of pulling it together. He's not a Boy Scout, but he's done an amazing job of pulling it together. And he is very good with Hezbollah, does not like them. And I'll tell you what, Israel's fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses, and they're not all Hezbollah, that I can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah. Because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it.
President Trump was subsequently asked whether he was frustrated with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who defied him by launching the retaliatory strike against Hezbollah.
Are you frustrated with Netanyahu, sir?
No. We had a great relationship. We're talking about some end details. I didn't like that he did an attack based on there was a very minor little thing with some drones that were released, and he ends up doing I saw that attack. I saw where that bomb went. Did you see what happened? That was a vicious, that was too much. You can do too much also. But we've had a very effective relationship. Without us, without the United States, there would be no Israel. Without me, there would be no Israel, because no other president was willing to do what I did. I've had a great relationship with Bibi, but now Bibi has to be more responsible with respect to Lebanon.
While President Trump was meeting with Qatar's Emir in France, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi held a press conference earlier today in Tehran, during the course of which he once again leveled a sinister warning towards the United States over Israel's defensive operations in Lebanon, demanding Israel must abandon its forward defense security zone.
از نظر ما دو طرف این تفاهمنامه
From our perspective, the two sides of this memorandum are, on one side, the United States and Israel, and on the other side, Iran and Hezbollah, and the end of the war in Lebanon is an inseparable part of the complete end of the war.
بخش جدایی ناپذیر از خاتمه کامل جنگ هست. خاتمه جنگ مشمول خاتمه اشغال.
The end of the war also includes the end of occupation. Without the withdrawal of Israeli forces from the territories they have occupied in this war, a full end to the war has not been achieved. And any military attack by the Zionist regime on Lebanon from now on, as well as the continued occupation of Lebanese territories from now on, will, in our view, be considered a violation of the Memorandum of Understanding.
یادداشت تفاهم به حساب میاد.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News, which is made possible by the generosity of our viewers. Please keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem and redemption of Israel. Jonathan Essen wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, until our next update, Shalom from Jerusalem.